in OpenAI's eternal quest for cash, it has found $1 billion from Disney.
It's a blueprint, I'd say, for all of Hollywood.
It comes with a whole bunch of very interesting licensing terms.
I think it just strikes me as a little bit naive that Disney will really be able to control the outputs here.
Figma IPO'd and is now worth more than Adobe was planning on paying, I believe.
Yeah. So it's a good time to go public.
Yes, but will next year be a good time to go public, or will it be like a .com floppity flip?
There's a big new report that just came out basically saying that Instacart will sell the identical items from the identical store at the identical time if they're at the same day to two different people at wildly different prices.
There's some suspicion that they're doing this based on people's private data. You go to Instacart and they're like, oh, no, that bottle of water is $20 for you.
Hello, and welcome to Slate Money, your guide to the business and finance news of the week. I'm Felix Salmon of Bloomberg. I'm here with Elizabeth Spiers of the New York Times.
Hello.
I'm here with Emily Peck of Axios.
Hello.
We are going to talk about OpenAI and Disney, two massive companies that are now like getting into bed with each other, but the thing is you're not going to be allowed to make a video of them doing things in bed together. We are going to talk about IPOs, of which there could be very many in 2026. I mean, given where the stock market is, that kind of makes sense. We are going to talk about pricing and whether it is okay that people on Instacart get shown very different prices for the same object. And somehow this is going to wind up segueing into a discussion about not only World Cup pricing, but also the Trump card, the gold card, the gold green card. Anyway, we have a Slate Plus segment about data centers in space. It's a fun one this week, so stay tuned. It's all coming up on Slate Money. Okay, so in OpenAI's eternal quest for cash to find that it can then incinerate in data centers, it has found $1 billion, which it is receiving from Disney. It is selling Disney $1 billion of stock. Now, to be fair, there's a lot of people out there who are willing to throw $1 billion at OpenAI for stock right now. So that isn't that interesting. Disney is a huge corporation that wants to be like hip with the AI cool kids, and so you kind of understand why they would want to invest $1 billion in OpenAI. This is just like a really boring equity deal, except it comes with a whole bunch of very interesting licensing terms, which Emily, explain.
This is a big deal. It's a blueprint, I'd say, for all of Hollywood. Basically, Disney is buying itself some amount of control over how OpenAI and specifically Sora, which is OpenAI's visual media creator. I don't know how you put words in and it makes a picture for you. So Disney is getting some measure of control over, say, like, you can show an image or video of you and Darth Vader, sitting and eating breakfast together. You cannot show a picture of you and Darth Vader doing anything naughty. You cannot you cannot mimic Darth Vader's voice in that movie. Disney has limited Sora to, I believe, only 200 characters that people can use, that fans can use. It has said you can't use character voices, and apparently there's in the contract or agreement it has, the companies have, there's like a very long appendix that sort of outlines what can and can't, or what can't happen in these Sora videos. So I guess Disney, if I'm putting myself in the mind of their legal department, maybe they're thinking, instead of just suing ChatGPT over and over again for copyright infringement or whatever, we're going to come in at the ground floor and we're going to just like lock down how our content can be used.
So I think what happened here is that the LLMs went out and sucked up every single piece of written content that had ever been published in the history of the world before anyone could really get their boots on to try and work out whether this was a good idea. And in the wake of that, there were a bunch of lawsuits, and I wound up getting paid $5,000. Rather, my publisher wound up receiving $5,000 from Microsoft for one of them because one of the LLMs had sucked up my book. But that was all a way to make things good after the fact. And now, as it becomes increasingly obvious that the next generation of AI is going to be video rather than text, I think, what is happening now with this deal and with, I'm sure, a whole bunch of future deals is that the owners of the video IP are trying to get out ahead of it and make and be in control from day one. And I think you're absolutely right that makes a certain amount of sense. And we should say that the flip side of this coin is that is that Disney is doing a sort of carrot and stick approach. They're like, if you cooperate with us, we will invest $1 billion in your company, and we will shake hands on stage, and we will be very lovey-dovey. And if you don't, we will send you all manner of nastygrams. And they sent a big nastygram to Google, and they sent a big nastygram to Anthropic, I think, and they're claiming copyright infringement. And so from the AI company's point of view, the idea is they have a strong incentive to make nice with the IP companies and do deals rather than what they've been historically doing, which is, ask permission after you've already ingested all of the material.
So I understand the business rationale for this, but I think it just strikes me as a little bit naive that Disney will really be able to control the outputs here. There was a great Wired story a couple of weeks ago about the fact that you could get an AI to tell you how to make a nuclear bomb if you just phrase the prompt as a poem. And so I don't know how even OpenAI will be able to enforce these rules around outputs when users find a million ways to get around them. So there's just, how is there not going to be just a ton of Disney themed porn?
So I think this is interesting. I think there are two answers to that question. One is what we saw with Fortnite, which was that Disney licensed Darth Vader to go into Fortnite, and then immediately a bunch of people tried to break it, and a few of them did, and a bunch of videos started circulating of Darth Vader saying things that he was really not supposed to be saying.
Yeah.
And the solution to that problem is they have worked it out, and then it becomes a kind of spy versus spy, it becomes this kind of not very long game of whack-a-mole, basically, in that people can do that for 5 minutes. Disney and Fortnite work out what they were doing. They close that loophole, and then they can't do it anymore. I think we will see the same thing with Sora. People will get around it. They will work. Disney will see how they got around it. Or Disney and OpenAI will work out how they got around it. They'll close that loophole, and then it will be harder. Most, I would say 99% of what we see in terms of this kind of infringing material is people searching the internet and circulating infringing material as an example of, look, I managed to get around the rules, and look, this person managed to get around the rules. It's not kind of people using it. People aren't actually genuinely trying to make Darth Vader porn and going out and enjoying their Darth Vader porn.
I like
porn.
that we've settled on Darth Vader of all the characters.
Some of them are.
But mostly it's this fun game of can we get around the robots? And I feel so long as it stays in that lane of there's going to be a certain number of people who try and get around the robots, and a certain number of those people will be successful, but it's not going to be it's not anyone's going to be making money off it. It's not going to be a business. I think that's inevitable whether or not Disney has a deal with OpenAI, and B, it shouldn't prevent Disney from doing this kind of deal with OpenAI.
I mean, it's important, I think, to recognize that Disney is sort of the crown prince king of US copyright. They are the masters. They literally changed the copyright law and got it to be longer so that they could keep Mickey under lock and key for longer.
And they did this like multiple times. Every time that Mickey was about to come out of copyright, they would like lobby Congress and Congress would extend it. It was wild.
I think that, I mean, if you're like pulling back and you're like, well, there's this new technology, Sora, where people can make videos. It's not going to be Disney or any of the other IP owners, the beloved IP owners of America, who have like teams of IP attorneys to make sure if anyone does like mess with Darth Vader and do something inappropriate, they're going to be on it. You know, they've been on it for years, since the birth of YouTube, and even before with videotapes. Like, I guess the real losers, like pulling back, and we've talked about this a little bit before, are the Felixes. Like $5,000. I mean, what is that? I mean, the people who are going to get their,
and once my
their
publisher
IP...
takes their cut of 50%, and then once my agent takes their cut of 15% of my 50%, like, yeah, it wasn't a massive check.
Yeah, so I wonder, I don't know, bigger picture, like who is getting hurt, or whose creativity and IP is just getting completely ripped off by all this new technology. I mean, I think TBD, and it's going to be hard to even understand it.
Yeah, and then very quickly, like the other thing, which is just very obvious, but we really should emphasize, is that, you know, technology moves very fast, and anyone who wants to make Darth Vader porn is going to be doing it using DeepSeek or something that is just not a big global AI company. And so if the big global AI companies put in even relatively mild guardrails on what people can do, all of the really bad infringing content is not going to be on their platforms anyway.
Well, there's another thing that, you know, AI people call the Snoopy problem, which is that, you know, you can train an AI on all these inputs, and so the AI kind of has an understanding of what constitutes Snoopy or Elsa from Frozen or whatever. And the users can use prompts to basically generate that character from an abstraction without ever naming it. So this strikes me as unenforceable across the board.
Again, I don't think the Snoopy problem is that hard. You know, if Disney is licensing 200 characters to OpenAI, then it is actually entirely feasible for OpenAI, like before it produces any piece of video or picture, to just do a quick check against its list of 200 characters and be like, does this look like one of those 200 characters?
You're misunderstanding the Snoopy problem, which is that it can't do that because it's referencing a sort of set of abstractions. So when you think about like what Snoopy looks like, if I said, I want you to draw, you know, a beagle that's white and has these dimensions or whatever, you can't check that against Disney's IP because it's a little bit too generic. But it will produce something that looks like
Elizabeth,
Snoopy.
You don't check the prompt against Disney's IP. You check the output against Disney's IP.
You couldn't do it.
I think you can. But the robot, you just tell the robot, you know, follow the prompt, do the thing, do all of the things that the user is telling you to do. But then before you show it to them, before you deliver it, spend a fraction of a millisecond checking that output against this list of 200 IP characters to make sure it's not the same.
But the problem is that the technology is not capable of doing that when you're dealing in abstractions. It can't.
Technology is 100% capable of looking at a picture of Snoopy and looking at another picture and saying, is this other picture Snoopy? Like that's
it famously is not.
That's the first thing that they trained AI.
AI.
Well, I mean, you can do it, again, all of these things to within like 99% accuracy. I'm pretty sure this is not an insurmountable problem, except for that no one even needs to go to that length. No one needs to be like, hey, OpenAI, can you draw me a, you know, white circle and a black dot and create Snoopy that way, when they can just go to DeepSeek and say, just draw me Snoopy. And no one, you know, like, why would you even bother?
Well, people have bothered the whole time. That's why Disney is having to do this. Anytime there's a new technology, users try to break it. But they also try to break it so that there's a playbook for doing these things when they actually, you know, want to for non-mischief making purposes.
Please write to us if you know how AI works. So I'm wondering, is this just to be basic, is this a good deal or a bad deal for Disney? Because when I first heard it, I was like, they're paying OpenAI. Like, OpenAI is getting access to like all their stuff, and, you know, that seems good, and they're not getting sued, and Disney in exchange is like paying to buy some OpenAI stock. I just feel like it's not that great for Disney.
So there's a couple of things that Disney is getting out of this. One is it's getting like coveted OpenAI stock. Great, fine. That's, it's probably worth a little bit more than they're paying just because there's so much demand for it. But like, who knows? Maybe the AI bubble will burst and it'll be worth less. Like, no one knows how much
it's
OpenAI
like
stock
stock
is worth.
Options.
The second thing they're getting is that they're basically crowdsourcing short form video around Disney IP. And what's super interesting about that is that under the terms that they did with OpenAI, if I go into OpenAI and I spend 3,000 hours creating an amazing short movie using Disney characters, all of that IP is owned by Disney. It's not owned by me. I have no rights to that. And everyone kind of believes, and this may or may not be true, but there's some non-zero percentage probability that it's true, that the future of mindless scrolling is not mindless scrolling through videoed TikToks, but it's mindless scrolling through AI-generated short-form video. And specifically, if Disney can come up with like a TikTok channel or something similar where people are scrolling through a whole bunch of videos that are created by a bunch of like incredibly creative users, none of whom have any rights to their IP, and they get it all for free, and they get this massive pool of UGC, user-generated content, for free, that they can then put on television and they can put on digital channels and they can do all the rest of it, then is that certain to make them lots of money? No, but it gives them like the potential. It is possible. A lot of people are making that bet that will be worth a lot of money.
I think of it as a do they have any other choice kind of dilemma, because all of the models are trained on their IP because that's fair use. And so from the company's perspective, it's like, well, if we're going to have outputs that basically violate our IP, shouldn't we be able to monetize them in some way?
Yeah, and to be clear, like, it doesn't matter whether it's fair use or not. They are trained on that IP.
I mean, its fair use is unbelievable. Like, these companies are profiting immensely from intellectual property that they didn't pay for at all. And it's crazy to me that I didn't know it was understood that was considered fair use. Like, isn't the New York Times suing them over this?
This is not settled law that it's fair use at all.
I think it's absolutely not. Like,
there are a lot of lawsuits about this, and there have been a lot of settlements around this. And yeah, like, there are definitely people who say that it is.
It's fair use up to the point before you're producing the output.
Well, we don't know. As I say, there is a lot of dispute about that. There are people on both sides of that debate.
That's fascinating. That is just such a, like, tech moves fast, and really, in this case, it's just...
If people genuinely thought that it was fair use up until that point, then I would not have received my $5,000 from Microsoft, right? Because that's all they're paying me for is, like, we are going to throw your book into this massive pool of data that we are ingesting.
But that's what allows them to use your book as output.
No, it does not. It explicitly does not allow them to use my book as output.
So if I ask ChatGPT about your book, it won't tell me?
Like, that is exactly the same thing. Like, now that they know what is in my book, they are explicitly not allowed to, like, quote at length or even minimally from my book. All that they have the right to do under this contract is ingest my book to help them be a smarter LLM.
So if I go to ChatGPT right now and ask ChatGPT what your book's about, it can't produce an answer?
It can tell you what my book is about, because lots of people have written that and it knows what my book is about. But it cannot. If you're like, can you quote 2 paragraphs from page 300? No, it can't do that. But yeah, I think it's this is indicative of where AI is moving, which is that we are getting this convergence of the tech companies and the content companies, and this is going to be the first of many such deals.
It says, I cannot provide verbatim paragraphs from page 200 of the Phoenix Economy or any other copyrighted book unless you supply the text yourself, which, if I could supply the text myself, why would I? Bro, what?
What?
But he did offer to give me key quotes, which I assume that he or she or they can just get from the internet.
But also, ChatGPT offers lots of things that it can't do. Yeah, I mean, that's like the number one annoyance, my number one annoyance with ChatGPT. It's like, if you like, I could do X. And you're like, that sounds great, do X. And it's like, eh.
That's me pitching stories every day. I'll write this.
But we should stick a little bit with OpenAI because I want to talk about IPOs and this idea. There was a Bloomberg article this week basically saying that if you add up all of the IPOs in 2026, it could come to $3 trillion, which would be like completely insane of like new market cap. The massive granddaddy of all of them being SpaceX, which is talking about possibly IPOing next year. Well, it isn't, but a lot of people are saying that someone is going to go public, that SpaceX could go public in 2026, which would be interesting on like 3 different levels, partly because Elon Musk controls SpaceX and he has famously hated the whole being a public company thing for a long time. So like what made him change his mind? Partly because SpaceX, if it goes public at the valuations being mooted, would probably be worth more than Tesla, which is kind of wild. But then there's a whole bunch of other IPOs, including OpenAI, which could happen next year. We had an IPO this week from Wealthfront, which was super interesting to me because they had an acquisition. They sold themselves to UBS for $1.4 billion a few years ago, and then UBS had a bunch of management shakeups and turned around and said, actually, can we have like take backsies on this? And Wealthfront was like, do we really want to enforce a deal where they are buying a company they don't want and will probably just shut us down? And so they were like, okay, fine, you get your $1.4 billion back, we'll just stay independent. But everyone kind of thought that was a sign of UBS coming to its senses and saying, Wealthfront is not worth $1.4 billion, it's not worth anything near that. They were just buying the technology, they weren't buying like the assets. But now Wealthfront is worth like, $3 billion. And you're like, oh, well, okay, so staying independent turned out to have been a smart move after all.
That was also true for another company this year.
Figma.
Yeah, Figma. Adobe was going to buy it, but the Biden administration blocked it. And then Figma IPO'd and is now worth more than Adobe was planning on paying, I believe.
Yeah. So it's a good time to go public.
Yes, but will next year be a good time to go public, or will it be like a .com floppity flip? I feel like is the question people are asking.
The thing that happened in the .com bubble, to be clear, if you look at 1999 and like a bunch of like 98, beginning of 2000, that kind of era, is that it was the greatest time to go public in the history of the planet. It was an awesome time to go public. If you were raising money, you could sell like a tiny fraction of your company for $1 gazillion. You got just like free money basically, and that was great. And anyone who wasn't issuing equity into the .com bubble was a moron. Like the people buying might have lost money. In fact, almost certainly did lose money. But the people selling, the companies going public, they made out like bandits. They did really well.
SpaceX is a significant IPO, but with some of the other companies, it strikes me as there's a kind of business journalism convention where if a company is a certain size, it's always maybe going to go public next year. And that's like just a recurring theme.
Well, I don't know. Like, I feel like for the past couple of years, maybe not. Like one of the themes over the past couple of years is, look at these massive private companies like Stripe. They seem to be perfectly happy being private, and isn't it interesting that they're not going public anytime soon? And I think for me, this little week's worth of discourse is an interesting flipping of that script.
I think it's very hard for companies that are private and have taken a lot of venture money to stay private because people want exits.
Yeah, I think it used to be hard, and I feel like SpaceX and Stripe and various others have kind of proved that it's not. Like what they do is they have little private liquidity rounds where people who want to exit can exit. And they've managed to solve that problem to a very large degree.
Yeah, I can't see Musk and SpaceX wanting to disrupt that vibe or why they would want to, unless Musk is like, I want to be a trillionaire. which
I would
could
not
really be a
discount
motivating
Musk's-
factor.
Yeah, especially in his case personally. Like, I think that could easily be a motivating
Just
factor.
because it's cool, not
Yeah.
because he obviously no one needs to become a trillionaire.
I think he has realized that having liquid wealth is kind of cool. Like, it allows him to do things like buy Twitter if he wants to buy Twitter. And you can't do that if you own SpaceX, even if SpaceX is worth more than Tesla, right? You can only do that if you own Tesla and own Tesla shares and can basically sell those Tesla shares to get the dollars that you need to buy Twitter. And so if he wants to do things that cost many, many billions of dollars, maybe he's like, and specifically he has said over and over again that I just need a lot of money so that I can get to Mars, which is like whatever. But whatever it is that he wants to do, if it's super expensive, then it really does actually help to have public currency to do that rather than just private stock.
Well, he does have to pay $30 million to each of his baby mamas. So if he wants like 1 billion more kids, he's
Maybe
gotta
if
find
SpaceX
that
goes
money
public,
somewhere.
he can up that to 50 million.
I guess the parallel, I said .com boom, and we talked about that, but maybe the parallel in my head, since the talk is now that both Anthropic and OpenAI would do IPOs next year, the parallel is more whenever the Facebook IPO was, I think that was 2012 or 2013. And, maybe the parallel is when social media went public, and the parallel now is AI going public and getting.
I mean, that is super interesting. And one of the super interesting things about not only the Facebook IPO, but also the Google IPO, which was many years earlier, is that both of them were terrible IPOs.
Yeah, they went really
they
badly.
were two of the worst IPOs to ever IPO. People got really excited about the companies, like Google's going public, and then Facebook's going public, and it totally shit the bed, and it went down rather than up, and everyone was pointing fingers at everyone else. And I remember writing about it at the time, and it was amazing how incompetent that IPO was.
Of course, long term,
in
just
the long
ride
term,
it out.
It was fine.
You
But
would have
in the
made a
short
lot of
term,
money.
everyone was like, "This is a complete disaster."
Yeah.
Putting together a $40 billion IPO of a $1.5 trillion company is really fucking hard, and there's a lot of room for error, especially in a world where you can't, walk down the street without someone screaming AI bubble at you.
They compared it, one of the pieces we read in the prep, they compared SpaceX to Saudi Aramco.
Yeah, that's the most valuable company up until now to ever go public.
But that the oil company they said at the time of the IPO was pulling in, I'm reading, that's why I've looked to the side, YouTube people. It had pulled in a $360 billion in revenue the year it went public, and SpaceX is only bringing in $15 billion a year. So I wonder about that. Do you have to pay a premium, or does Saudi Aramco have to have a higher level of revenue because it's like oil, which is like a real thing, plus it's Saudi?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone was convinced we're at peak oil, right? So the whole point about Aramco is that expected future revenues are going down. With SpaceX, expected future revenues are going up. So you're paying for future revenues, not current revenues.
You're paying for the promise of sending all the billionaires to space. And
Well,
we can't get them back.
what you're
We just
really-
can't get them back.
Starlink.
What you're really paying for is Starlink.
Yeah.
Starlink is the massive majority of the value of SpaceX.
And that's internet,
And it has a near monopoly on
satellite.
what
internet.
it does. Yeah.
Satellite internet. And then everyone is kind of expecting that is going to eventually become like satellite cell phone service. And at that point, it's just a license to print money.
Isn't also part of SpaceX? I think of it as like a government contractor. Basically.
Yeah, that's how it grew, right? It's early. It's quite an old company. It's been around quite a long time, and the way that it got up to critical mass and the way that it became sort of cash flow positive in the first place was exactly that. It would get massive contracts from NASA to send rockets into space, and it did that more effectively and more efficiently than NASA could do on its own. So yeah, that was how it became like this big space company in the first place. And then it was like, well, now that we're good at sending things into space, let's send an entire network of communication satellites into space and create this thing called Starlink, where anyone anywhere on the planet can get internet. And that was, something that people had dreamed of before, but no one really had the money to do it. No private company had the sort of wherewithal to, send that many rockets into space and create that kind of a network. But SpaceX did, and now it's $1 trillion company.
I think it's really worth pointing out that this company that could be the biggest IPO of next year, that is worth more than $1 trillion, the reason it was able to grow the way it was because of government investment. And the leader of that company spent a good chunk of this year sort of destroying the government.
Well, I mean, do we think that one of the reasons, I mean, this is in the back of my head, right? Do we think that one of the reasons that Elon wants a whole bunch of liquid wealth is actually to do this thing that he has threatened to do, but doesn't seem to have got very far with, which is starting a whole new political party and taking over the U.S. government?
I feel like he said this week, actually, on the Stephen Miller's wife has a podcast, and he went on it and said that though he doesn't regret doing what he did this year for the U.S. government, that he wouldn't do it again or something. Like, it wasn't worth it because people lit Tesla dealerships on fire or whatever. So I don't know if he's still... I don't pretend to know how he thinks or anything, but...
It kind of depends how much ketamine he's been taking.
I would imagine his appetite for politics has been dampened.
There's also just no, popular movement for a third party, and our system is really antagonistic to third parties. So he would just be lighting money on fire if he did that.
Hey there! Before we get back to the show, I want to tell you about The Slatest, which is Slate's daily newsletter that lands in your inbox every evening. It's written by Slate's editor-in-chief, Hilary Fry, and it is the perfect way to end your day a little smarter than you began it. Every issue pulls together the sharpest stories, the most surprising news, and the can't-miss Slate podcasts, including this one, plus smart analysis and a bit of well-earned distraction. From DC to Hollywood to the algorithm, The Slatest keeps you clued in to the world and to Slate. You can sign up right now at slate.com/theslatest. We are going to talk a little bit more about the business of space in the plus. I definitely do want to talk about this question of whether the valuation of SpaceX is in part a function of this idea that the real growth, the real future growth, is putting data centers in space, which sounds kind of crazy. And then you think about it and it's like, is it really that crazy? But we should also, just before we finish the main show, talk about the whole latest iteration of a conversation that we've been having for a while on this show, which is dynamic pricing and individualized pricing. And there's a big new report that just came out basically saying that Instacart will sell the identical items from the identical store at the identical time of the same day to two different people at wildly different prices. And to which the natural reaction is, whoa, that's terrible. So, Elizabeth, Emily, which one of you wants to tell me, whoa, that's terrible?
Well, it's terrible for a specific reason. There's some suspicion that they're doing this based on people's, private data. And when that happens, I think it's different from doing, say, price testing in the context of rolling out a new product, where what you're trying to triangulate on is the customer's price sensitivity, but the customer is kind of a uniform class. And it's a little bit different when you're sort of discriminating against specific customers based on their existing data that you have. So, for example, a good thing that came up in the prep was that Orbitz used to charge Mac users more because they had data that said that if you were using a Mac, you probably had higher income.
This was back in this was a million years ago.
Yeah. So imagine, now, given the wealth of data that companies have access to, being able to triangulate on you, Felix Salmon, know exactly where you live, what your income is, et cetera. And you go to Instacart and they're like, oh, no, that bottle of water is $20 for you because we know who you are and we have all this information. And so I think
you got all that OpenAI money.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so I think there's a difference between using dynamic pricing to just do routine price testing to see where, customers as a class, where the prices hold up or don't, and then utilizing people's data to, target people individually.
So we should really jump in here very quickly and emphasize that the active word in what Elizabeth was saying is suspicion. That there is no evidence of this. There is people have been suspecting that this is happening for some years now. There have been a lot of reporters chasing the story in various different forms. There have been a bunch of people talking about a bunch of companies that they suspect might be selling the data for these nefarious purposes. And what is interesting to me is that over the past however many years, whenever anyone looks for highly variable pricing, whether it's on Instacart or whether it's on Amazon, there was a piece about like how Amazon charges schools different amounts of money or whatever, they find it. But whenever anyone tries to find a company that is selling like, we will allow you to use personalized information to discriminate against individuals or to charge individuals more or to charge individuals less for that matter, they haven't yet found that. So yeah, it is entirely intuitive that is what is going on, but we do not know that is what is going on.
I'll back up and say, so this was research conducted by Groundwork Collaborative. They're a progressive group with Consumer Reports. Everyone knows Consumer Reports, and published in the New York Times that Ben Castleman wrote up. And basically, Instacart is A/B testing prices, selling eggs at different price points just to see who which is the most bestest one. I don't know exactly what they're looking to see, which price moves the eggs the fastest relative to how much money they're going to make.
Which price makes them the most money, basically.
Well, yeah, which price makes them the most money. And of course, of course people think this is bad. I don't want to know that like at any given moment I could either be charged $2.99 for my eggs or $3.50 for my eggs. Like that just seems unfair on its face. It is unfair on its face. But then you like think a little bit more about how, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I think it's like endlessly interesting about how companies have always done dynamic pricing even before algorithms and the internet. You can go to happy hour and get your beer for $2 off. Or, you buy a plane ticket on Christmas Day. It's cheaper than if you buy it on to travel on December 23rd. I guess the difference with the algorithm is I know what's happening if I choose to go to the bar after happy hour, if I choose to fly on the 23rd versus 25th. I have a good grounding in like what is fair, what is not, like how they're going to charge me for the privilege of traveling on the day I want or whatever. With algorithmic pricing, with buying the eggs, you have no freaking idea. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just always kind of happening. And even if you're the most astute consumer, you're not going to know.
Well, also there's a question of, how much this, bleeds into price gouging ultimately.
Yes. And that's the other, like the dark side of dynamic pricing is the gouging, right? It's snowing, so we're going to charge you $50 for a $10 shovel, or it's the pandemic. Everyone's on Instacart. Like, who knows what shenanigan? There's no evidence, but that's the time to do the gouging then, and the shenanigans. I remember we were up at midnight trying to get our Instacart delivery because we were afraid to go to the store or whatever. So yeah, and the way things are moving now with regulation, like I think one of the pieces we read said the FTC had started looking into some of this, into dynamic pricing, sort of to try and lift the veil, but that's all sort of been put to the wayside. But that's what you would expect. Consumer protection laws to this is where we would need them, but that's not happening.
New York, interesting. All three of us live in New York State, and New York State now has a rule basically saying that if the price is algorithmically personalized to you, then right next to the price, when it happens, you need to see a little disclaimer saying this price is algorithmically personalized to you. I have not seen that disclaimer. I don't know if I am assuming neither of you two have. It'll be very interesting to see whether anyone ever sees this disclaimer in the wild.
It does say so the exact wording of it is this price was set by an algorithm using your personal data.
Oof.
So they would have to establish that the company was using your personal data to you.
Well, it's not they. I mean, the company themselves obviously knows whether they're using your personal data or not. And then
think about how these tech companies operate. Usually it's we'll fix it when we get in trouble.
That's how it's operating now. I was thinking about that reading the Groundwork research with Consumer Reports. I'm like, this is what we have now. Like, we can't, not that regulation was ever so amazing, but like this is how it works now.
It is how it works now. And I think there's a super interesting case study happening with World Cup tickets right now, which is that now that we've had the World Cup draw, everyone knows, which are the games that everyone wants to go see. People want to see England versus Croatia much more than they want to see Switzerland versus Qatar. And so you have that demand for the big games versus the little games, and that is showing up in ticket prices. And there is a FIFA-operated secondary marketplace where you can buy and sell your tickets, and the average price for a World Cup ticket now is somewhere in the region of $5,000. It's absolutely insanely expensive.
I don't understand how that's new. Like, tickets for better games have always
correct.
cost
So
more.
this is not new. What's new is just the magnitude of the prices. That these prices are roughly 5 times more than they were in Qatar 4 years ago.
That also, I mean, okay, but like that's sports right now. Like I was looking at like World Series tickets. I don't know. I had to say ticks. And I mean, just anything in person now is. I bet you could look at any prices for any concert 5 times as much as it was 5 years ago. Whatever.
So this is exactly this Emily Peck reaction is exactly the reaction of FIFA and the reaction of a fair number of Americans. Emily is not an outlier here in this reaction. She's just like, well, this is supply and demand. We live in the market economy. I'm a good neoliberal, yada, yada, yada. In the rest of the world, there is real anger about this. In the UK, FIFA is actually basically not allowed to sell tickets to the World Cup in the UK because the UK has a law now saying that you're not allowed to resell tickets for more than face value.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, yes.
And so the global football fandom is up in arms about this because remember as well that 90+% of the football fans on the planet are not American, right? So they don't have this intuition that, oh yeah, of course it's going to cost thousands of dollars.
They're not beaten down by capitalism the way Americans are, essentially. I love that for them. Wow.
And so now there's this massive tension, right, globally about the ticket prices, and everyone around the planet, not so much in America, but like everywhere else, who are like, we want to travel to America to see the World Cup next year, they're saying like, wait, what? How much?
That's like, there's all kinds of examples, but like you think something's normal that happens like in your family and then you tell someone else about it and they're like, what? That's how it is for America. Like, yeah, everything costs like a few $1,000s, anything you want to see. And like the rest of the world's like, girl, no, it doesn't have to be like that.
Only the obscenely rich should be able to see a soccer game.
Everyone else has to stay home and watch TV and get ads.
But that's exactly where like the market economy arrives at, right? There's a finite number of seats to these games. You sell them to the highest bidder because capitalism. And then the result is that unless you can afford $5,000, you're not going to go see the game. And it just feels... Yeah.
We didn't talk about it, but like that's what President Trump is now doing with visas. He's charging $1 million to get a visa. It's the same. It's like it's kind of on the spectrum.
But no, you're absolutely right. This is the $1 million Trump card, which is now a thing that exists, which is basically you can apply for a green card and go through the normal green card process. And as someone who's been through the green card process and who has many friends who have been through the green card process, this is a very long and involved and torturous process to go through, even if you're doing it the easy way, which is via marriage to someone who can support you. So the green card process is painful. He's like, and under Trump, it is clearly going to become more painful. They want to decrease the amount of legal immigration and people who are legally becoming permanent residents. Or you just jump to the front of the queue and become a permanent resident, get your green card super quickly if you write us $1 million check. And like on some level, like again, I'm kind of with Emily on this one, which is like, is this discrimination in favor of rich people? Like, duh, obviously.
They're not.
If anyone is that rich and really wants a green card that badly, then like, why not let them pay $1 million for it? I suspect that demand for this gold card, as they're calling it, is going to be minimal. There is a threatened platinum card, which will cost $5 million. And that one is actually much more interesting, financially speaking, to rich people. Because the thing about the platinum card is that it uniquely allows you to not pay tax on your global income. You only need to pay tax on your U.S. income. This is illegal and probably unconstitutional, and so that's why it doesn't exist, is because they haven't quite been able to work out how to offer this thing legally yet. But if they ever do, then I can see why it would make a bunch of sense for a bunch of rich people to spend $5 million on a platinum card. That makes more sense to me than why anyone would want to spend $1 million on a gold card.
If I was a rich person who was a U.S. citizen, I think I would be pissed about the $5 million get out of tax-free Visa card. Like, I would maybe sue over that, because it's like, well, if the rich people from the global rich don't have to pay the taxes, like, why do I have to pay the taxes? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Also, the $1 million visa is a way to just restrict immigration to the rich, but some White House officials are saying, like, we want it to be a way we get more high-skilled immigration. And I'm like,
and if you can afford $1 million gold card, we will decide that you're high skilled.
Well,
yeah, I mean, which is kind of like fine, whatever. It's a decent proxy. You know, you have that much money that you'll be contributing to the economy. You'll be spending a lot of money. You'll be probably employing people directly or indirectly. But the
Are you getting Elizabeth and I's faces? We're making faces here on YouTube. You got to see it.
Like, trying to measuring skills is always a fraught thing. You know,
so just
US
use money as a proxy. Clearly, the rich are better.
No, but like you look at the way that, like,
by Donald Trump,
Canada and New Zealand do it, and
he got political skills.
We're not going to wind up doing it the way that Canada and New Zealand do it. But people receive their green cards generally up until 5 minutes ago when this gold card was announced, only after they have lived and worked in this country for many, many years. I lived in the U.S. for well over a decade. I can't remember exactly how long it was before I received my green card, and that is entirely normal. If you're worried about, and I was a legal immigrant the whole time, right? There was no point where I was illegal. Well, maybe there was like 5 minutes, but like generally there was no point that I was illegal. I think there wasn't.
Maybe we should cut this so Felix
no.
doesn't get
I mean,
deported.
this comes down. No, this comes. I've talked about this in the past. This is when I was on an H-1B. I was working for Bridge News, and I got fired. And like, if you're no longer working for the employer who's sponsoring you, then that makes you out of status. But they do give you like somewhere between 3 and 6 months of like grace period to find a new job or a new sponsor, which is what I did. And so I think I was definitely within that grace period. The point is that if you want to reduce legal immigration, the place you reduce that legal immigration is the people getting those work visas, the H visas, the I visas, the O visas, the L visas, all of those, rather than like once they're already living and working here, preventing them from becoming green card holders. So tightening up the issuance of green cards, most of which are family related anyway, is not the place to reduce legal immigration, is my point.
So is the Trump policy is not going to reduce legal immigration? Is that what you're saying? I'm
saying they will, but like the point at which you do that is around all of those other alphabet soup of visas. It's not around LPR, the legal permanent residence.
Felix, do you think you could become a U.S. citizen if you started trying now, if you first came to the U.S. now in 2025? Or is it harder now?
The standard way to do it, which is the way I ended up doing it, is marry an American, get the American to sponsor you for a green card, receive the green card, hold the green card for 5 years, naturalize. And that pathway is 100% still in place.
Huh. But what about, there were some news reports this week about some people that were about to become citizens at a ceremony, and that was pulled back. I guess those were...
Yeah, that was really weird, right? There was a whole bunch of people from like the list of 30 countries that they don't like, from like Venezuela and I can't remember, like Iran or wherever. And they are green card holders, and they have every right to live and work in the U.S. for the rest of their lives, right? And that, like, green cards can't be, well, up until now there's this convention anyway that like you can't just take away someone's green card, and they were going to naturalize because they're, you know, they live and work here and they want to become an American, and then at the very last minute they were like, actually no, you can't. And again, that doesn't stop them from living and working here perfectly legally, right? It just stops them from naturalizing. And it's such a weird thing to do. It makes no sense.
I think it's about making two classes of people who live and work here, even more than
Well,
there already
there's
is now.
3 classes, right? There's the people who are here on visas, there's the people who are here on green cards, and then there's the citizens. And yeah, I think you're right. I think they're really trying to maximize those distinctions.
And like those can't vote. I don't know if that matters.
Exactly. If you have a green card, the main difference between being here on a green card and being a citizen is voting. But also, you know, like entering the country. It's always a little bit more fraught to enter the country when you're on a green card than when you're a citizen. If you arrive at the airport with a U.S. passport, they have to let you in. You know, that is, you have the right to enter the country. With a green card, it's a little bit fussier.
Yeah. I think they're just, it seems like what's happening is they're making citizenship more of, fraught almost? Or
Yeah, I mean, like Kristi Noem has come out and was like, you can only be a U.S. citizen if you love your country, and then if you don't love your country, then we're going to take your citizenship away from you. And you're like,
what?
Yeah, Donald Trump has come out talking about denaturalization. He's like, I'm going to take the people who've naturalized and then strip their citizenship from them. And like, I've talked to, you know, friend of the pod, Guan Yang, about this, and like, it's not obvious that he can't do that. Like, it's not something that any previous government has done, except for like maybe like there was one woman in the 1950s or whatever. But like, it's conceivable that Marco Rubio, if he started going around the list of Americans and saying like, you're denaturalized, like he might actually be able to do that. And they've been talking about like making it harder to be a dual citizen and all of this stuff.
And did you know, like I think it's the turn of the century, there was like a Supreme Court case, because it used to be if an American woman married a foreign man, she would lose citizenship. And this policy went to the Supreme Court, and they said, no, that we can't do that anymore. But that used to be how it was. That's
wild. But yeah, we should have a numbers round. Emily, do you have a number?
18,000. Okay, this is the number of older people who left their homes and went missing in Japan last year. Double the number from 2012. This is because Japan has like a lot of old people. People age 65 and up make up 30% of Japan's population, and that's second highest in the world, apparently. In the US, it's 18%. So they have a lot of old people, and they're getting dementia, and an increasing numbers of them are leaving their houses and just going missing. And the Japanese economy is like adjusting to being like a place of where very old people live. And maybe Felix probably knows this better because he was recently in Japan, but there's this great BBC article on this, and they even described, there's like a restaurant where the premise is that older people with dementia are waiting on the tables.
Oh yeah, there's the dementia restaurant, and everyone's so nice to the waiters and so patient, and they may or may not get your food. And
you may or may not get your food at the restaurant. So it was just making me think, because the U.S. right now just 18% old people, but those numbers are headed up. And I guess by 2030, it'll be 20%, and then 25% by 2060. So we need to, they're putting trackers on the old people now in Japan. So I guess ultimately we're going to need to put trackers on ourselves when we get older.
This is why I welcome my new personalized, individualized database dystopia, because eventually it's going to save me from myself when I'm demented.
Yes, you need a chatbot that that's just like you, and you can be like, what happened, like, tell me my name again, or whatever it is.
Elizabeth, what's your number?
My number is 14.13, and that's $14.13, and that is the price that you pay right now for a USDA choice boneless steak per pound.
Well, depending on Instacart and its mood that morning.
Fair. But we have a cattle shortage, and so steakhouses are having to charge a lot more for steak.
Wait, are you saying that $14 a pound is expensive for steak? Because it seems dirt cheap to me.
That's USDA choice, which is the mid-market steak. It's not prime, which is what you would get in a restaurant. And it is much higher than, steak kind of peaked in August and it was $14 and I think 30 something cents a pound. But it's just insanely expensive right now, and there's a cattle shortage.
Okay, I'm just going to come out and say that $14 is not insanely expensive, that beef is not expensive enough, and that, the optimal price of beef is much higher than what it is right now, and we eat way too much of it.
My first ever Fortune column was about inflation and the price of beef. And one of the things that I wrote about was hedonic substitution, where basically one of the things that was not really taken into account when people think about inflation in food is that sometimes people will switch from more expensive cuts to lower grade beef or ground beef or whatever. And it's all kind of treated as the same product. But in steakhouses, you're getting that prime cut. And so you're seeing, entrees go up by like $60, $80 for filet mignon.
Oh my God.
And at the top tier steakhouses, this isn't having any effect because people, if you're going to one of those places, like you expect, just pay a fuck ton of money for your steak. But at places like Longhorn and Outback and Texas Roadhouse, they are feeling it because people are just balking at the prices.
Yeah, so. I am feeling absolutely no sympathy for them.
I think you're just so wrong.
The existence of McDonald's is just proof positive that there's too much beef in this country and it is underpriced.
That is all USDA select beef, which is the worst cut of beef.
Yeah, that's select beef.
And it's kind of chopped up and mashed into a beef-like thing. It's like a simulacrum of beef.
We're used to paying a certain amount of money to feed the fam, and it's becoming really expensive, and prices
if you
we're used to
feed
paying.
them beef, which is like this super
grocery
luxury
prices
product.
are up. There was a really frustrating exchange that I saw with what's her name, the White House press secretary, who's 12, and Caitlin Collins, where Collins said, you keep saying the economy is great, but everybody is feeling the prices go up. And the press secretary said, core CPI is at whatever it's at. And it's like, well, people don't pay attention to that because it excludes food and energy, which are the two things that people notice the most or they feel it the most, because food, gas are for most people.
Yeah, and when people complain about gas prices, I talk about how salient they are. And when people complain about egg prices, I talk about how salient they are, because we do this thing where we're like filling up our car with gas on a regular basis. We're buying eggs on a regular basis. I just don't think that beef rises to the level of like gas and eggs as this like absolute necessity that people have to buy every week.
You didn't grow up in redneck America where ground beef is like a staple.
Steak is like the most American of meals. Do you know what I mean? For hundreds of years.
Steak and potatoes is our, classic high end.
I don't know. You're wrong.
I'm wrong.
You're just
wrong. I'm wrong,
it's
people.
not right
But I'm not only
it is.
wrong. I also have a number, which is also animal welfare related. My number is 20.5 million, which is the number of animals that that were farmed for their fur in 2024. And the interesting thing about this number of 20 million is it is down from 140 million in 2014. It has absolutely plunged. Over 10 years, it has gone down by like 80%. And it's kind of interesting to me that, we all remember from like the 80s, the campaigns against fur and fashion and whatnot. But the really, really big decline in animals being farmed for their fur, no one's been wearing like a leopard coat for decades. But if you're talking about like the minks and the raccoon dogs and that kind of stuff, the massive decline has just been in the last 10 years, which I would not have expected.
Is that because they make warmer coats now out of other materials?
No, I think the ability to make warm coats out of not fur has been around for much longer than 10 years.
So it's just a style thing? It's just not a style.
Yeah, it's just like finally the consumers are like, no, I don't actually want a mink coat. Thank you very much.
Well, I think now it's kind of considered a little gauche, like to wear real fur. Like I think there's
wasn't it considered gauche like 10, 20 years ago already as well?
But now like the really rich people, and you guys probably know this better than me, they buy these like really expensive, like not Canada Goose or like these very expensive like active-wear coats and things, and there's just other ways to spend a lot of money on coats besides fur. And
I think maybe that's it. That fur has no longer is no longer a signifier of luxury.
It's like tacky.
Now it's like that. Now it's like the Canada Goose branding. Although, yeah, I'm a little bit unclear where there was this thing where Canada Goose had like a tiny little fur rim on a bunch of its hoods for a while, and there was a lot of controversy about whether that should be there. But yeah, generally speaking, no one needs fur for warmth. You use it for signifiers of luxury, and if it doesn't signify luxury anymore, then there's no demand and it falls.
That's it. And then the minks get to live another day.
And the minks get to live.
Could we kill them for our steak? No.
Yeah, we could
kidding.
start eating them instead.
It's a joke.
Anyway, I think that's all we have time for this week, unless you want to learn about data centers in space, in which case you're going to need to be a Slate Plus subscriber. Do it. It's good for the planet. Thank you to Micah Phillips and Jessamine Molli and Cheyna Roth for producing. Please send us on Slate Money at slate.com your hottest takes of 2025. We are going to have a special episode all about hot takes. So what? Just think back to the most fire takes that you came across in 2025. Send them in, and ideally just send them in as a attachment to your email as a voice memo, and then we can play it on the show.
Can you just quickly explain what a hot take is? Is it something is wrong, or it goes against the conventional wisdom, or is so outrageous? Like what is a hot take actually?
Elizabeth, you're the queen of the memes. You do it. What makes a take particularly
It's a little
fire?
bit counterintuitive, not knee-jerk contrarian, but it's something that people probably wouldn't be immediately intuitive.
Yeah, so something that like you hear and then your first reaction is really wow, but that also has it's like colorable, as the lawyers would say. Like, you can defend it.
Okay. So the guy who said the poverty line should be $140,000 a year.
Exactly.
That's a hot
like
take.
a classic fire take.
Classic. So it's not quite a Slate pitch, because Slate pitch is a genre of hot take.
If there was a particularly fire Slate story that you think we should include, then please send that to us too.
Yes.
And we'll be back next week with more of this here, Slate Money. And remember to check out the Slatest, Slate's daily newsletter. It's your daily update on the most urgent, surprising, and unusual news delivered straight to your inbox. A special thanks to all our Slate Plus members. If you haven't already, consider joining. Slate Plus members get unlimited access to all of Slate's journalism, plus they get ad-free podcasts, and they help support our independent reporting.